There is a cave in Vietnam so large that it has its own weather system, complete with clouds, wind, and rain forming entirely underground. That is not a metaphor or an exaggeration. Son Doong Cave, discovered by a local farmer in 1991 and only fully explored by scientists in 2009, stretches for roughly 9 kilometers, reaches heights of 200 meters in places, and contains sections where the ceiling has collapsed, letting in enough light and rain to grow a dense jungle on the cave floor. That jungle, deep inside a mountain, has never been touched by direct sunlight from above. The clouds inside Son Doong form when warm, humid air from the jungle below meets the cooler air of the cave passages above, creating genuine mist and fog that drift through the cavern like something out of a fantasy novel. Explorer Howard Limbert, who led the British Cave Research Association team that mapped the cave, describes standing inside and watching weather happen around him. The cave is so wide in places that a Boeing 747 could fly through it without touching the walls or ceiling. And Son Doong is just one example of how extraordinary the hidden world beneath the surface actually is. Most people picture caves as small, dark, damp tunnels. The reality is that some of them are geological wonders that dwarf anything you would expect to find above ground. So today we are going underground, past the surface layer of soil and rock, into some of the most mind-bending subterranean environments on Earth, and we are going to find out exactly how these places form, what lives in them, and why scientists say we have barely scratched the surface. Before we go deeper, it helps to understand how a cave gets this big in the first place, because the process is far more dramatic than most people realize. The majority of the world's largest cave systems are carved out of a rock called limestone, and the sculptor is something as ordinary as rainwater. When rainwater falls through the atmosphere and trickles through soil, it absorbs carbon dioxide and becomes a weak carbonic acid. That mildly acidic water then seeps into cracks in limestone bedrock and, over hundreds of thousands or even millions of years, slowly dissolves the rock from the inside out. This process is called karstification, and it is responsible for entire underground landscapes, including not just caves, but also sinkholes, underground rivers, and caverns with towers of mineral formations. The scale of time involved is genuinely staggering. Son Doong itself is estimated to be between 2 and 5 million years old. The underground river that originally carved it has long since moved lower into the earth, leaving behind those vast, cathedral-like passages. Other caves form in different rock types and through different processes. Lava tubes, for example, form when the outer crust of a lava flow cools and solidifies, while molten rock continues flowing through the interior, eventually draining out and leaving a hollow tunnel. Hawaii and Iceland have impressive examples of these. Sea caves are carved by wave action along coastlines, and glacier caves form within ice sheets when meltwater bores tunnels through the frozen interior. Each type produces a completely different environment with its own textures, temperatures, and inhabitants, but limestone caves dominate the record books for sheer size, and they are the ones most likely to surprise you with what they contain. Son Doong gets the headlines for its height and drama, but the longest cave system ever mapped is Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, USA, and its scale is almost incomprehensible. As of recent surveys, Mammoth Cave has over 676 kilometers of mapped passages, making it the longest known cave system in the world by a significant margin. Explorers have been mapping it since the early 1800s and are still finding new sections today. The cave sits inside a UNESCO World Heritage Site and contains multiple distinct ecosystems across its different levels. Some sections are bone dry, others contain active streams, and the temperature inside stays at a nearly constant 12 degrees Celsius year-round, regardless of the scorching Kentucky summers or freezing winters above ground. That thermal stability is one reason caves were used by indigenous peoples for thousands of years, not just for shelter, but for mining. Gypsum and other minerals found in Mammoth Cave were harvested by people around 4,000 years ago. Moving to a completely different kind of record, the Waitomo Caves in New Zealand are famous not for their size, but for their ceiling. Thousands of glowworms of the species Arachnocampa luminosa cover the cave ceilings and emit a cool blue-green bioluminescence to attract prey, turning the cave roof into something that looks like a star-filled night sky reflected in a lake. It is one of the most visually surreal natural spectacles anywhere on Earth, And in Mexico, the Cave of the Crystals, discovered in 2000, contains selenite gypsum crystals up to 12 meters long and 1 meter wide, some of the largest natural crystals ever found. The cave sits above a magma chamber, and the air inside reaches 58 degrees Celsius with nearly 100% humidity, making it lethal without specialized cooling suits. Perhaps the most extraordinary thing about caves is not their size or their minerals, but the life inside them. In the deepest, darkest zones of a cave, where no sunlight has ever reached and the only energy source is chemical, evolution has produced some genuinely alien-looking creatures. This branch of biology is called biospeleology, and researchers who study cave life have found that animals adapting to permanent darkness tend to follow predictable patterns over generations, losing eyes they no longer need, losing pigmentation because there is no UV light to protect against, and developing highly sensitive antennae whiskers or lateral lines to navigate by touch and vibration instead. The olm, a cave-dwelling salamander found in the karst regions of the Balkans, is a striking example. It is completely blind, entirely white, can live for up to 100 years, and can go a decade without eating. It navigates using electroreceptors that detect electrical fields in the water around it. The Texas blind salamander, the cave crayfish, and the cave fish species found in Mammoth Cave itself all follow similar evolutionary trajectories. What makes this even more fascinating is that these creatures did not all share a common cave-adapted ancestor. They evolved their similar traits independently through a process called convergent evolution, because the same environmental pressure, total darkness, tends to produce the same solutions across completely different animal lineages. Some cave ecosystems do not depend on sunlight at all, even indirectly. They rely entirely on chemosynthesis, where bacteria convert minerals and chemicals in cave water into energy, forming the base of a food chain that operates in complete isolation from the surface world. These ecosystems are essentially self-contained planets of their own, sealed inside the rock. Here is something that might genuinely surprise you. Scientists believe a significant portion of Earth's cave systems remain completely unknown to us. Every year new caves are discovered, and some of them turn out to be massive. The entrance to Sondong was known to locals for decades before it was formally explored, simply because the passage leading inside was so dangerous and the sheer scale of what lay beyond was not obvious from the outside. Cave exploration, called speleology, requires extraordinary skill and specialist equipment, including rope systems for descending vertical drops, dry suits for underwater passages, called sumps, and air analysis gear to check for dangerous gases. Some of the most significant cave discoveries happen not in remote jungles, but beneath populated areas. In 2018, cave divers exploring beneath the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico confirmed that two previously separate underwater cave systems were in fact connected, creating the longest known underwater cave in the world at over 347 kilometers. It sits beneath tourist resorts on the Caribbean coast. The Mayans considered the entrance pools to these systems, called cenotes, to be sacred portals to the underworld, and archaeologists have found ritual offerings and ancient human remains in their depths. The underground world is not just a geological curiosity, it holds records of ancient climates locked in cave formations called speleothems. It preserves fossils in ways surface environments cannot, and it may eventually help us understand what life on other planets looks like, since icy moons like Europa and Enceladus likely contain liquid water environments in their subsurface layers that could mirror Earth's cave ecosystems. The world beneath your feet is still being mapped, still being understood, and still producing surprises. If you found any of that as fascinating as we do, hit the like button, subscribe so you never miss a new video, and let us know in the comments which cave system blew your mind the most.